Season 31 of Diablo 3 is here, and I'm going to show you how to succeed as a demon hunter using the Shadow Impale build, which, as you can see here, is utilizing Impale to slice through lines of enemies at a really fast rate. This is a really fun build. I'm going to show you everything you need to know, and hopefully with no actual information overload. Starting off with, of course, the main skill we're going to be using, and our hatred spender is going to be Impale. If you're new to Demon Hunters, we have a red resource called Hatred, which regenerates using a hatred generator, like our bowlers here, and we have spenders like Impale, and then we have Discipline, which is for more utility-based spells that can usually be seen by a purple background like Shadow Power, Companion, and Smokescreen. So, like I said, we're using Impale as our main hatred spender. Throw a knife that pierces through all enemies in a straight line. Now, we're using the over-penetration rune, which is the one that's going to mean that it is going to pierce through everything in that line, and is really important for this build. It's mainly because of the set we're wearing and a specific weapon that we want to get that's going to make our Impale damage go so crazy. Going down the right side, we've then got Smokescreen. This quite literally lets you vanish for a few seconds from sight, and therefore is a great get out of jail free card ability when you're in a bit of bother. And we're actually going to be using the special recipe rune on this, where the ability does not start its cooldown until after the effects expire, and therefore improving our uptime. Going down one more, we have Shadow Power. Gain life for dealing damage for 5 seconds. Now you'll notice I haven't taken a rune on here, and the reason for that is that our set, on the Shadow's Mask set that this build is based around, the 4 set, Shadow Power gains the effect of every rune and lasts forever. So what you can do is literally quite here, turn it on, you can see these tendrils coming out, turn it on, and that's it, you're done. We've then got Companion, and at the lower end of Paragon levels, we're talking sort of 3,000 and below, which, remember, are actually capped now, and therefore always is going to be the boar. If you are at the highest Paragon level and you feel like you could do with a bit more adventure in your life, then you can swap this out for Wolf. Basically, Wolf gives you a short damage buff, and obviously has Wolf that fights alongside you, whereas the boar is a defensive one. Your boar charges you and taunts nearby enemies, summons a boar companion that provides life regen and increased resistances to you and your allies. So it's a great defensive kind of one. So it's defensive versus offensive on that skill, depending on which one you want to take. Then we've got Vengeance, which basically is going to turn you into the embodiment of vengeance. TLDR, it improves your damage by 40% while it's active. And then the last skill slot is, well, quite interesting. You can change this to whatever the hell you like, within reason, of course. You can go for Bowlers, which is going to actually do well with the set as well, the Shadow's Mantle. Fire multiple shots of cold that freeze and no longer explode. If you are going for the Bowlers, do take the Freezing Strike. We're basing this build off of doing cold damage. There is a fire variant as well, but like I said, this one is focusing on the freezing one. And this is actually going to synergize really well with some of the gear we're taking as well. Another option you could take on here, again, synergizing with our gear, is going to be Fan of Knives. Of course, you can't put it to left click, so what I would then do is, for example, put your Vengeance in the left click slot and then move Bowlers to somewhere else. But anyway, what I'm saying is that you can take Fan of Knives in this slot instead. Let's look at it somewhere else. Sorry. My bad, guys. I have completely messed this up for you. So, Fan of Knives, and then go with Bladed Armor, gaining additional armor after using your Fan of Knives. And this is a really great defensive that we can get as well. Now, looking at the passive skills, remember I said that we're going to be using a lot of cold damage and slows? Well, Cold a Week is our first passive, increasing damage against slowed or chilled enemies by 20%. No brainer there then, considering we're doing a lot of cold damage. Ambush is just a great all-round passive. You deal 40% additional damage to enemies over 75% health, with the insane Impale damage we are looking at doing, where it's going in a straight line and doing more damage to subsequent enemies it hits in that line, therefore first hitting them over 100% health, well, not over, but at 100% health. We are going to be doing 40% additional damage on that first shot. And it's a very bursty build that's quite fast, so I think that's why this is fantastic. Again, synergizing if you do take Fan of Knives is Numbing Traps. Enemies you slow, chill, or hit with Fan of Knives have their damage reduced by 25% for 5 seconds. So again, you can see here, it's going to be with the slow and the chills and Fan of Knives, reducing enemies' damage, synergizing well with our active skills already. Lastly, I think awareness is great. This is a get out of jail free card, especially if you are playing on hardcore. You could take tactical advantage if you're not playing on hardcore and want a lot more movement speed, where you use your Volt, Shadow Power and Smokescreen, or backflip with Evasive Fire, you gain 60% movement speed. And also a fun one is Blood Vengeance, especially if you're not taking bowlers, and therefore you're going to want more hatred and kind of hatred regeneration. This is going to give you hatred regeneration when you actually get hit. Well, when you pick up a health globe. So it's sort of like hatred regeneration, even though it's not. You're going to get more hatred, basically. And, you know, with all those impales we're throwing out, especially, like I said, if you're not taking bowlers for hatred regen, this one could be really good for you as well. So looking at the gear, it's mainly, like I said, going to revolve around the Shadows Mantle set. We can see here then that the 2 set, while equipped with a melee weapon, so to be very specific here, you actually do need to equip a melee weapon, not a bow or crossbow, as a Demon Hunter for Season 31 in this build. While equipped with a melee weapon, the damage of your bowlers, chakram, Fan of Knives, so Fan of Knives as well is what I like to take it on this build, and Impale is increased by 6,000%. The 4 set, remember, Shadow Power gains the effect of every rune. That's your Shadow Power defensive here. And the 6 set, Impale deals an additional 10 billion% weapon damage to the first enemy hit, and 10 gazillion more to subsequent enemies. So when you're firing it in a straight line, this is why the overpenetration is so good, because you can fire it through the enemies, doing more and more damage as it goes through. On the hands, sorry, the wrists, we're taking Raps of Clarity. Again, getting cold damage on all of these if you can. Cold skills deal 20% more damage as an option we can get on here. It's going to go really well with our weapon. But mainly this is actually going to be a really good defensive, especially if you're taking the bowlers. Your hatred generators, which is a bowler, reduce your damage taken by 50% for 5 seconds. On the ring and neck, we're going for the Traveler's Pledge and the Compass Rose. This is from the Endless Walk set. While moving, damage taken is reduced by 50%, and while standing still, which you should do when you're about to fling out those knives, damage dealt is increased by up to 100%, which is, of course, fantastic. On the legs and waist, we're going for the Captain Crimson Silk Girdle. Even though it's made of silk, apparently it's very protective. Regenerating 6,000 life per second, reducing the cooldown of all skills. Fantastic for things like your Vengeance and your Fan of Knives, if you're taking it. Reducing all resource costs by 20%. Fantastic by itself. The reduction of resource cost is also very good if you're not taking bowlers and you want to get out more impales without needing the focus hatred regenerator. The free set means that damage dealt is increased by percentage of your cooldown reduction, and damage taken is reduced by percentage of your cost reduction. Lastly, we have the Convection of Elements. Gain 200% increased damage to a single element for 4 seconds. This non-static effect rotates, and it basically rotates. The one we want obviously here is cold. So every now and then it's going to rotate to cold. We're doing increased cold damage. So it's every like 20 seconds or something. You'll get 4 seconds of increased damage with that. And then before we go on to the gems, let's look at the really juicy bit of the build, the weapons, of course. Like I said, you are going to need a melee weapon for this. Carlay's point is the bomb. The damage of Impale is increased by 375% and returns 15 hatred if it hits an enemy already impaled. Again, if you're not taking bowlers especially, and you're not getting that regeneration, this is going to be fantastic for getting some hatred back when we can. And again here, you can see we're looking for it with cold damage on. That's going to synergize really well with the other passives etc. we've taken. And also if we can get cold skills dealing more damage here on the Raps of Clarity. On the quiver, yes, we're using a quiver, even though we're not using a bow. Crazy, I know. Holy Point Shot. Impale throws 2 additional knives, making this even crazier, and deals 100% increased damage. And this is where the build gets super fun. Because if you remember, again, if an enemy's already been impaled, that's where the other knives as well with the Holy Point Shot is going to come in and be even better, which is really, really exciting. Oh, I love this build so much. It's really, really fun. Regarding the gems then, we're going for Bane of the Stricken. Each attack you make against an enemy increases the damage it takes. Gain 25% increased damage against bosses and Rift Guardians. Way back in the day, if you guys played then, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, you may remember that this build with Impale was known as the Rift Boss Killer. Bane of the Stricken, with increasing the damage against Rift Bosses with the insane burst damage of the impaling, is fantastic for this. Bane of the Trapped, increasing damage against enemies under the effects of control impairing effects by 60%, and you're also going to get an aura reducing them when they're near you by 30%. This obviously goes hand in hand with itself, but also of any chill effects we're putting out. Lastly, on the neck, we're going to put the Gogok of Swiftness. Gain swiftness of every attack, increasing your attack speed by 1% and dodge by 2% for 4 seconds. Stack out to 15 times. So rather than being like with our impales, we can be like sort of like a ninja. That's right. And that's just fantastic. You gain 1% cooldown reduction per stack of that swiftness as well for things like Vengeance, etc. This is really good. Moving on then to what we're putting in Kunai's Cube. Dawn, reducing the cooldown of Vengeance by 65%. Remember that our Vengeance is going to increase our damage by 40% when activated. The Stone Gauntlets. Okay, one thing to note. If you don't know, in Season 31, we can mix and match here. We can put all 3 amulets, rings, all 3 weapons, etc. Unfortunately, this is a build that doesn't really do very well with that. We're already able to get the best benefits we can with 1 weapon, 1 armor slot, and 1 jewelry slot anyway, and we don't really need to mix these up. So it's not really changing much this season. Getting hit increases your armor by 50%, but reduces your movement speed and attack speed, and it stacks up to 5 times. And then the Ring of Royal Grandeur, reducing the number of items needed by set bonuses by 1, meaning that you only need 5 of the Shadow Mantle set, not 6. If we go on then and look at our follower, we're going to go with the Templar, and the skills we're going to take is Heal, Loyalty, both giving you healing. The third one being Onslaught, delivering a massive blow and causing target and nearby enemies to take increased damage. And lastly, Guardian, which again is a get out of jail free card, saving you from death. Now, of course, if our Templar dies, we do not get any of these skills. That's why I put on the Enchanting Favor, equip on follower, your follower cannot die. Therefore, it's always up. Remember that we're going to be doing increased damage to enemies that are slowed. Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker is the best weapon for your follower because of this. Basically, it does loads of lightning damage, jumping up to 5 targets, and reduces their movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. We're also going to be putting on Captain Crimson's legs and boots, and then the Vigilante belt here for the Templar. The Wall of Man, 30% chance to be protected by a shield of bones when you're hit. That's obviously for the Templar. Adding strength gems so that it can do more damage. Nemesis Bracers, shrines are going to spawn an enemy champion. Emanates, or emanates, or however you pronounce that. Basically, that means that whatever effect is on the gear for the Templar will also affect you. Shrines will spawn an enemy champion then. In Nephilim Rifts, etc., it's spawning an extra champion that will drop globes and make your speed farming even quicker. This is fantastic, a must-have. Flavor of Time, pylon effects last twice as long. Lovely, again, emanates on there. Same on the shoulders. Your town portal is no longer interrupted by taking damage. So if you're in a bit of a tough spot and enemies are attacking you, your town portal will not be interrupted when being attacked. On the head, we're going for Leoric's Crown. This is going to double the effect of the gem you put into the crown. And therefore, we're going to put a diamond in here, reducing the cooldown of all skills, like your get out of jail free card and your onslaught, etc., is going to be reduced by that gem in Leoric's Crown. It would be reduced anyway with any gem in the head slot. However, Leoric's Crown doubles the effect of it. Chest doesn't really matter. And then rings, we've got Unity, because it's a good all-round ring. And the Oculus ring, which is basically going to make a circular area of damage that when appears you can stand in and do more damage. And again, the Templar will create this, however you can also stand in it to do more damage as well. It's not just for the Templar. It's a little orange ring on the floor. Stand in it, you're going to have your damage increased by 85%. Obviously it's ancient when you're standing in it. Looking then at the order we're going to actually spend our Paragon points in, it's fairly simple. We're going to go with movement speed first, then dexterity, then life, and maximum hatred, we don't really need. On the offensive core, it's going to be cooldown reduction, then it's going to be crit damage, and then chance, and lastly attack speed. On defensive, it's going to be resistances, wherever they are, here we are, resistances, armor, then life, and then life regen. And lastly, on the utility points, it's going to be area damage, then life per hit, then resource cost reduction, and then lastly gold pickup radius, which we don't really care too much about. This here is the order in which I would use your altar in Tristram. It's a really great feature that, remember, is in every single season now and will never go away. And that's pretty much it, guys. That is how you are going to play with the Shadow Impale build as a Demon Hunter in Season 31. I hope you enjoyed it. You can actually click here if you are looking for other build guides this season. I am looking to cover as many as possible. And this is my first ever Diablo guides. Usually I cover World of Warcraft guides on my other channel, Heavy Heals. So do check that out if you're interested in that as well. But Diablo is something I'm covering that's new. I've always been a Diablo player. Diablo 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm very excited for all of that upcoming. You can expect Diablo 4 and Immortal, and maybe 2 as well, we'll see, guides for me as well. So please do click that subscribe button if you do like what you see here, and leave your feedback down below, because as I said, I'm new to doing Diablo guides. I'm not new to Diablo, of course, but very new to doing guides on it, and therefore I'd really love to hear what you like, if there's anything I've missed that you'd like to see in the guides, or if there's anything that you loved specifically, etc. You know, I just want to know what you guys want so that I can best, offer you the best information. If you also do want to play with some other people or are interested in ARPGs, do join my Discord. There's a link below for that as well. And if you want to see some behind the scenes content and talk to me one-on-one, etc. about Diablo, or get any more feedback or private sort of guides, you can also join my Patreon, where there's a link below for that as well.